You're gonna wear that fancy dress?
Yeah, because everybody likes it.
Okay, sure. You're gonna keep the shorts on under?
Yeah, Mommy, I love you.
I love you. I just always pictured Indy in Hawaii, so I was excited to bring her here and show her the beaches and show her the places that like we loved and show her the aloha. But I wish I haven't. I wish we didn't come here.
Hawaii was supposed to be paradise for Ariana Wyatt. She moved here with her family in February of 2021, when her husband, a technical sergeant with the Air Force, was assigned to work at Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam. Their daughter, Indy, was 3. Within just a few months, they started getting sick.
So this is just from this year.
This is your medication from
Mine
this
and
year?
my husband's. Wow.
Face rash, migraines,
Diarrhea.
Were you guys on medication before this?
No. This is all from just living here.
When did you notice health problems in your family?
I think early on, our cat did not want to drink the water. So I should have known then that something was up. For myself, it started the end of May. I started having migraines pretty regularly. Migraines that I can't even describe. And then I started having like really bad back pain and just diarrhea that would not stop. So I went to the ER and they found out that my kidney was swollen and they did not know why. And then for Indy, it's hard to talk about Indy. One of the first things was that she was having urinary issues, and we would call the doctors and they would say like, oh, just put her in the bathtub and put, baking soda in there and let her sit. Around October, I started seeing like this decline in her to the point where she would be like, Mommy, my legs hurt. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm tired. Oh, God, this eats me alive. Like, she was telling me this whole time that she was not okay. And then the night before Thanksgiving, I had taken a shower and my entire back was just like inflamed and red. I had rash all over my face. It just felt like a horrible sunburn. It was almost like, oh my, this is it. The water, it's the water.
That same Thanksgiving week, almost 6,000 people reported getting sick. Many went to the hospital for diarrhea, vomiting, and chemical burns. Both service members and civilians, they all had one thing in common. They lived in current or former base housing, in homes connected to the Navy's water system. Water many people were now saying smelled like gasoline.
Oh, it's got on fire. That's crazy. This is concerning because not only with the smell, you actually feel it, a burning feeling and itching.
But the Navy dismissed everyone's fears. In an email on November 28th, a base commander said, "There are no immediate indications that the water is not safe. My staff and I are drinking the water on base." Families didn't buy it. They knew they lived close to Red Hill, an old Navy fuel storage facility. They knew Red Hill's tanks were close to the wells that supplied their drinking water. And they knew Red Hill had a history of leaks. There had been a big one in 2014, another in May of 2021, and there had just been another one on November 20th. But the Navy kept saying the leak hadn't affected the water.
The tanks and the fuel are monitored on a daily basis to INCH, so there's no active leak. We have not lost fuel.
I have a 18-week high-risk pregnant wife, and I'm being told you can use the water, go away.
You have been saying that it's safe to bathe with, and we have been experiencing side effects. It is not safe.
The problem is there's houses where people bathe and there are no effects. So how do you shut down water for everybody?
You guys knew about it last week, and the military dismisses it. And we're the ones that have to live with the repercussions.
Almost 2 weeks after people got sick, a report from the Department of Health revealed there was fuel in the water, 350 times the acceptable level. The Navy had been serving bad water to 93,000 people.
The week of the water situation, I called her doctor and was just like, hey, she has a lump in her neck and she's saying that her neck hurts. We got her in and they told me at 3 years old that she had, her thyroid was attacking itself. and that we needed to begin treatment immediately. Drink some water, okay? So make sure you wash it down. Good job.
When you heard officially there is something wrong with the water, how did it make you look back on the past few months?
Like, I just think of every single time that I had put Indy in that bathtub with that water and made her sit there when she didn't want to. And that every single time they told me, like, just push fluids with her. And that I was unknowingly making it worse.
What could the long-term risks be?
Her endocrinologist says that in this type of situation with exposure, it could be cancer. For them to say, like, it's short-term exposure, it's only happened in November, is a complete lie. It's a complete lie.
Your sense is that it's been going on for much longer?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We've been poisoned much longer than just November, and much longer than just this year. I mean, they've had multiple spills. I know they had a really big one in 2014. So this has been happening for a long time.
As the 1940s began, the world was in turmoil.
Red Hill was built during World War II to protect the U.S. military's fuel supply from aerial attacks. It's the military's largest fuel storage facility in the world.
A completed tank was 250 feet, top to bottom, and 100 feet in diameter, big enough to hold a 20-story building. The tanks can hold 6 million barrels of oil.
Red Hill's tanks are just 100 feet above Oahu's main drinking source, an aquifer that serves 500,000 people across the island. From when fuel first filled the tanks in 1943, the Navy has documented at least 77 leaks, or what it calls unscheduled fuel releases, totaling about 200,000 gallons. Vice News reviewed dozens of Navy documents, audits, risk assessments, and data spanning decades that show the Navy irregularly maintained and insufficiently inspected Red Hill and continuously downplayed the facility's risks to the EPA, Hawaii's Department of Health, and the public. Considering this history of negligence, the November incident was almost inevitable. In spite of Red Hill's known threat to the environment, the Navy has maintained it is critical to national security.
Red Hill is the last gas station between the mainland and any kind of points west. And so if we have to surge any kind of major military operations, we are the only thing in town to support those operations.
Locals have been calling to shut down Red Hill since 2014, when a massive spill contaminated the groundwater and soil. The drinking water wasn't tainted back then, but people did start to fear what all these fuel leaks could do to them and the environment.
This is a ticking time bomb. It is set up for catastrophic failure.
Ernie Lau manages Oahu's civilian water supply, serving 1 million customers. After the November spill, he closed 3 of the island's main wells so jet fuel couldn't get from the Navy system into the rest of the water supply. How did you feel when you heard about the latest leak?
I said, my worst fears have come to pass. You know, we've been trying to sound the alarm on this situation for 8 years now. I won't have peace until this facility is emptied out and shut down. Below the tanks and nearby these tanks, the aquifer is contaminated with fuel.
The aquifer is already contaminated?
It is contaminated under the facility and nearby.
So this leak has way more people than the families that were on the water supply.
That is correct. The thing that is common between the Navy and the Board of Water Supply, we tap the same aquifer. It's hydraulically, physically connected to each other. So it's like a glass of water with 2 straws, but it's the same cup. And if fuel is contaminating one side of the water in that cup, it could migrate across the valley and be pumped out and sent into our water system to our customers. We cannot allow that to happen. They were actually having detections of fuel and fuel products in their drinking water source going back, looks like from about July.
So people have been potentially drinking contaminated water for months before they were notified.
We think that is a possibility looking at that data. That is a question that you need to pose, I think, to the Navy.
Has the Navy been honest with you?
I don't think they've been completely honest with me, frankly. They don't tell us everything, and there's probably more information available than we are even aware of, but they're not willing to release that.
The Navy declined an interview request with Vice News and refused to answer any of our questions. In a statement, they said, "The health, safety, and well-being of our people, their families, and our community neighbors has been and will remain our priority."
We have about 1,000 military contamination sites in Hawaii.
1,000? The U.S. military established its first base on Hawaii in 1907 and is now the state's second biggest industry after tourism. Professor Kyle Kajihiro's family has been on Oahu for 4 generations. He leads tours to show just how much power the military has over the island and the scars it's left behind.
Everything from unexploded ordnance, unexploded munitions, to these chemicals that are moving in the environment invisibly, but could be there for a long time. So yeah,
That's Pearl Harbor down there?
Yeah. This was the center of the food basket of Oahu. Their vision of turning it into a military base just sort of overrode what was already here for 1,000 years, and now have turned Pu'uloa into a giant Superfund site. There's a constant occupation underway, even if it doesn't always look menacing, and the Red Hill disaster is only the most recent incident that helps to reveal, I guess, these problems that have been here for a long time.
This place looks like paradise, and then you hear about these problems.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. That's part of the problem, is that the image of paradise masks the violence that's going on. You'll see signs along the shoreline that say, don't eat the fish, don't go swimming, because it's toxic. And the military controls hundreds of thousands of acres of Hawaiian land. 68% of the military's land holdings in Hawaii come from the stolen lands of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And so it's not a problem of the past, it's a present problem of dispossession. Those are lands not available to Hawaiians to use for other purposes. So all of these sites add up to an environmental justice problem, an environmental racism problem that affects mainly working class Native Hawaiian and immigrant communities.
What are you most concerned about?
I'm worried about our islands becoming a toxic catastrophe. We can't continue to do this addiction to the military economy, which leads to disastrous outcomes like what we're seeing right now.
Over the years, Red Hill employees have anonymously leaked documents to the press and lawmakers, suggesting the Navy downplayed leaks, hid information from regulators, and ignored its own consultants' recommendations on how to fix the facility. One of those whistleblowers was Victor Peters. After Red Hill's spill in 2014, he publicly shared documents showing the leak may have been almost 50% bigger than what the Navy said.
When did you start at Red Hill?
1972. I crawled on my hands and knees and installed cable as a young man all the way through the tunnel.
Peter spent decades at Red Hill, working his way up to managing the facility and other military fuel farms in the Pacific until 2014. He specialized in leak detection and says he repeatedly tried to raise issues internally but was dismissed.
When did you start noticing problems?
The first time I walked into Red Hill.
So it was leaking decades ago?
Yes, 24/7.
The Navy says 180,000 gallons have leaked from Red Hill. What's your estimate?
It's going to add up in the millions.
So they're missing hundreds of thousands of gallons of fuel being documented?
Well, I can just tell you what I observed, and now they may not consider that a leak because it's leaking on the floor, it's gone into a sump. I would imagine a majority of that did not go into the ground, but, so it's your definition of what you want to consider a leak.
Do you consider that a leak? As an expert?
Well, to me, it's supposed to be in the tank, not on the floor. So, yeah, I did. I basically documented everything that had to do with leak detection that I was involved in. This was the Red Hill fuel contingency plan, August 2007. This is what the contractor wrote. He outlined everything in yellow that he had to take out. The government would not pay him unless he take all this out. See, everything related to leak detection.
So did you feel like that was undermining the goal to keep the drinking water safe?
I'm just speculating, but if they followed the recommendation here, I think that both the 2007 Tank 48 leak and the 2014 leak would have been detected immediately.
If these recommendations had been left in the report?
Yes.
Does the Navy have leak problems in other facilities around the world that you're familiar with?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is it a widespread problem?
It's part of the business.
The military's toxic history spreads far beyond the Hawaiian Islands. A 2009 inspection revealed the Navy had been knowingly providing unsafe water to most of its overseas bases, some going back 20 years, and that, quote, despite the fact that deficiencies could result in potential health risks, they're often ignored. Even after this, it took the Navy 6 more years to start fixing the problems. In the US, the Department of Defense found chemical contaminations at 687 military sites. The most notorious case happened at a Marine Corps base in North Carolina called Camp Lejeune, where toxic solvents and fuel poisoned the drinking water for 3 decades.
Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, is quite possibly one of, if not the worst, water contamination incidents in modern world history.
Did you have any pictures of her? This is her, right there.
That's Cheney?
Yeah, she had lost her hair. She was under treatment then.
Jerry Ensminger was a Marine on the base in the 1970s. His 9-year-old daughter Janie died of leukemia in 1985 as a result of in utero exposure to the toxic water. From the 1950s to the 80s, about 1 million people were exposed at Camp Lejeune. Many later developed certain cancers at abnormally high rates. Hundreds of babies were born with birth defects. Many died. Ensminger has spent decades investigating how the military let this happen and fighting for compensation for victims.
The drinking water was contaminated for decades. The bad part about it was that the Department of the Navy and the Marine Corps knew it was there and did nothing about it.
Why?
They've never answered that. You know the term playing ostrich? Put your head in the sand, hope it goes away.
How many military bases have these issues?
90% of them, if not more. The United States Department of Defense is our nation's largest polluter, without exception. Forget about Dow Chemical, forget about ExxonMobil, forget about DuPont. The United States Department of Defense has more Superfund sites than any other entity in our nation. Period.
Can anyone provide a real check and balance to what's happening?
Efforts like ours on the Camp Lejeune issue, we're trying to, but I mean, look at what just happened in Hawaii. Evidently, the Department of the Navy didn't learn a damn thing. They knew they had fuel leaks for decades in Hawaii. They knew it.
How did you feel when you heard about what had happened?
I said, here we go again. They've abused the environment for over a century with chemicals. And then they try to hide it.
What lies ahead for those families?
They need to be proactive in their health because they could end up like a lot of people at Camp Lejeune. The burden is on the victim. I'll probably be fighting this till I die.
Ensminger's work led the government to acknowledge the link between the toxic exposure on base and a long list of cancers and illnesses. The VA now has to give benefits to Lejeune families, but he's still fighting for service members to be able to sue DoD for damages from their time on base. After months of pressure from the public and Congress members, on March 7th, the Pentagon officially ordered the Navy to shut down Red Hill.
Secretary Austin decided today to take all steps necessary to defuel and to permanently close the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility.
On March 18th, the state and Navy finished flushing and testing the contaminated areas and declared the water was safe again in all homes. Since then, over 100 people say they've experienced symptoms like headaches, dizziness, and rashes. As for the island, closing Red Hill isn't the end. The closing of civilian wells has already caused water shortages. What's the future hold for Oahu and for Hawaii?
It's going to be challenging, and it'll probably be challenging over a number of years. The Navy would try to portray, and I've seen this pattern of behavior before, they poured a lot of money into the response to this incident, and it's all good. They've taken care of all the problems. Everything can go back to normal. That's not true. That's exactly what the DOD wants us to do, to kind of forget it and to let it just fade in memories.
The Pentagon said it could be a year before the fuel is out of the tanks, one of which leaked again in April. And it'll be even longer before those who drank fuel know exactly what it did to them. Research has shown that people exposed to total petroleum hydrocarbons, or TPH, the chemicals in jet fuel, have an increased risk of neurological problems, infectious disease, cancer, and autoimmune disorders.
Here's my bathroom. It's all pink. It's got a rainbow feature. Dry your face off, but water's bad.
Yeah, we don't use that water, huh?
No.
We use the...
I got a butterfly minute.
You do? That's right. Do you know what that's called?
Yeah,
What is
the
that?
thyroid.
Your thyroid. Very good.
I drank some bad water.
Oh.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. You're okay.
And
You're
then it's like a little red.
Ariana and Indy Wyatt are now part of a class action lawsuit against base housing and have filed personal injury claims against the Navy. The family applied for reassignment, given Indy's condition, and were approved. They'll leave the island this summer.
Every 3 weeks, we have to get her blood done. And I just think of like having to hold her down while she's like begging me to like leave or like, Mommy, please make them stop. Like, I feel like I've betrayed her.
Does she know what's happening?
She's like, I won't drink that water anymore. I remember when it rained for the first time. We used to just come out like jump in muddy puddles with her rain boots on. And I remember looking outside and there was like a rainbow sheen just on the ground. And just having to tell her, like, we can't do that no more. And her understanding, like, that it's bad. That this is just, you can't play in the water. You can't play in the rain anymore. I think she feels like she's being punished. And I don't know how to have that conversation to make her understand that it was never you. It was none of this is you.